Okay, we're going live.
All right, well then I will call this meeting to order. This is the October 14th, 2021 meeting of the Salem Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. I'm the chair, Dylan McDowell, and we'll proceed with roll call. Mickey Varney.
Present.
Alan Alexander notified us he'll be late. Tony Cato.
Present.
Woody Dukes is currently absent. Dave Friedenmacher is excused. Rick Hartwig.
Present.
Keith Norris.
Present.
And Paul Rice. Oh, Paul, you're on mute there. You want to make sure your audio works for us?
Yes, present.
Perfect. That's half the reason we do this, right? It's just to make sure our audio is all connected. All right, everyone. Well, we have a packed agenda today. We have 3 great presentations to hear, a pretty full information report as well. So we can jump right in with the minutes. Hopefully everyone had a chance to review the minutes and open to any comments or edits that folks might want to propose before we move to adopt.
I move we accept the minutes from the September 9th meeting.
Second.
Second. Any further discussion on the minutes? All right, we'll do a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. All right, the voice vote carries. The minutes are approved. We'll move now into our public comment period, and I see we have Linda Beerley joining us right now. So I'll give her a moment to connect to audio here. So we will now move to our public comment. Hopefully everyone received, there was 3 pieces of written public comment, 2 in relationship to the Beaver strategy, which we'll be giving a presentation on later. And I see that Jeffrey James is in the room as well. And so we have an opportunity now, if members of the public would like to give comment testimony, you can do so for about 3 minutes. And I know, Carol, you had indicated you would like to give verbal testimony as well. So Carol Snyder, why don't we start with you?
Okay. Yeah, I'm Carol Snyder, president of the Salem Parks Foundation, and I just wanted to tell you about a project we're about to embark on. And that's fundraising campaign for the restoration of the Eco Earth Globe in Riverfront Park. I don't know if you've looked at it lately, but it's in a rather sad state of affairs, literally falling apart. Much of Africa is gone, and chunks of the Pacific Ocean and some of South America. So there's been very little maintenance of the Eco Earth Globe since it was unveiled in 2003. And last year, the City Council hired a professional restoration firm to do an assessment and make an estimate of the cost, and they came up with $400,000. So we're currently talking with the city to determine how much of that they would handle, but we know that there's a lot of other priorities for the city right now. So most of the funding would come to us. We think it's something that should be done and should be done soon, so it doesn't just keep deteriorating. And we think that a lot of people in Salem have noticed the condition of the Eco Earth Globe. And we think there's a lot of people who would be interested in helping if a group just stepped forth to lead a fundraising campaign. So we've decided to do that. We're now working out the details with the city, and we're meeting with Council President Chris Hoy tomorrow, and we'll be making a request to council. But we expect that most of the funding will fall to us and to the people that we contact and who contact us. So we'll be working mostly with the Salem Public Art Commission because it falls under their purview, but because it is a prominent feature in a premier city park, we thought we'd want to let SPRAB know what we're up to.
Thank you, Carol. I really appreciate that. And I appreciate you coming to let us know. I did read some of the stories about that last year as the quote came out, and was curious myself about the next steps. So I'm really grateful for the Salem Parks Foundation taking that on, and we'll make sure to contribute myself as well, just to help that along, because that is a really great landmark here in the city. Are there questions or comments for Carol from other board members? Well, Carol, I would encourage you to let us know as that gets finalized and off the ground, and maybe share anything with Tony if there's a website or anything from the Parks Foundation newsletter, et cetera, that we should all be aware of, so we can make sure to highlight that in our communities as well.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Okay, well, do we have anyone else looking to give verbal testimony tonight? I know, as I mentioned, we had two pieces of written testimony from Linda and Ken Beerley, and then Jeffrey James. I see Linda and Jeffrey James are in the room. Did either of you hope to give verbal testimony tonight?
Jeff.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
Go ahead, Linda.
Oh, I was just going to say that. So thank you for the opportunity, but no verbal testimony from me tonight. Thank you.
okay. Thank you so much, Linda. And Jeffrey, would you like to give any verbal testimony to accompany what you sent us?
I did not intend to give testimony. I thought I had a meeting conflict the same time another Zoom, but I'm able to attend. I did send a letter that I hope you'll look at and consider. It had three main points. The fact that Hillficker Park has no access from the west, which is the majority of the neighborhood. And if you walk up from Trader Joe's to Hillficker Park, you can't get there. There's private land in between the end of Hillficker Lane and Hillficker Park. So that needs to be cured with an easement or some means that the park's staff can devise. And I hear it's being worked on, but it's been years since we've requested it. The second point was there's two major asterisks on the Parks Master Plan in the Morningside neighborhood. One asterisk, I think, has been implemented with the acquisition of the Fairview Park. The other asterisk we think natural would be to look at the Meyer Farm, which is a very pristine, extremely valuable in the opinion of the community. That is under threat right now with a subdivision application being filed. But Morningside neighborhood is firmly protesting that, and with a 5-page report. We see the asterisk being implemented. And then the third point in my letter was about connectivity. In the, I think it's the bicycle or the trails master plan. In talking to our city councilor last night at Morningside, we concurred that the ideal would be to connect the parks with some kind of pedestrian trail access. And that would be, starting with the first one I mentioned, Hillficker. And we walk up from Trader Joe's to, if you can get to Hillficker legally, and then connect, hopefully, eventually in the future to Meyer Farm would have a bicycle trail or a nature trail going through it. That's 30 acres. Kind of ambitious, but I think we need to look at that. And then across the street from the Meyer is the Woods open space, which is dedicated open space in the Fairview Master Plan, 14 acres, and it's about to be donated, we understand, to the city, to you, as woodland, dedicated open space. So a nature trail going from Meyer across Battle Creek through the woods. And then Fairview is just a short distance away, the trail continuing through as the area develops, some kind of pedestrian link to Fairview Park. And then out Fairview Park in the vacated Strong Road, Old Strong Road. The trail could lead up to Reed Road on Reed Park. But the opportunity is now because they're about to improve Reed. And so we're just drawing attention to the fact that the park staff need to look at that and work with Public Works to implement that connectivity walkway from along Reed Road to that new park. And so those are the main points. So I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm sorry I don't have a prepared
No, not at all. This is
presentation.
helpful.
I'm glad you were able to hear my summary anyway. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Before you leave, I want to open it up if other members of the board have questions or comments. Mickey, we're gonna, sorry.
Oh, I just wanted to say thank you so much for that great explanation and for the maps and the well-written email. I just really appreciated it. I would like to have our parks personnel review it and come back and, come back to SPRAB perhaps next month when we meet, or the following month, and kind of fill us in on what maybe could be done moving forward in the future. I know we're going to have a new master plan eventually, and I'm hopeful that some of these things would be included in it. But I just wanted to say thank you, and I'd really like to get some feedback on it.
Thanks, Mickey.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll second that as well, especially the desire to have an update from staff. I think would be really valuable in this, especially to note some more information on this. I'm not as familiar with this specific park, so I think it'd be helpful to have a better sense of the area and what's already taken place. And I really do appreciate, especially the foresight, Jeffrey, in terms of a bike path and connecting all the parks. That's something I think that there's a lot of passion for, both in the community and among the staff.
Good. Yeah, we think so. Thank you.
Thank you. Mickey, I know you'd maybe during new business, we can revisit that as a formal request then to staff.
Okay.
Wonderful. Okay. And then the other pieces of public comment we had were in relation, as I mentioned, to the Beaver strategy. We will be getting a presentation on that. So if everyone's comfortable, we can review those at that time, but I want to open it up in case anyone would like to make any comments now. Okay, seeing none. Well, let's get into our first presentation. We have Katie Lombard from the Oregon Department of Forestry talking about Tree City, USA.
Thanks for having me. So as you all know, Salem has been a Tree City, USA for how many years? Anybody want to say it out loud? 45, that's right. And you also have 15 growth awards, which means 5 years ago, you were actually be considered a Sterling Tree City, USA. So congratulations on that. In 2011, the city of Salem was actually our Oregon Tree City of the Year. And that is an award that us here in the Oregon Department of Forestry Urban and Community Forestry Assistance Program, along with Oregon Community Trees, the members there are advisory board, and they're also a nonprofit here in Oregon, all about trees and educating individuals on trees. And we chose City of Salem in 2011 to receive that award. What I wanted to go over a little bit is first and foremost is to let you know a little bit about our program if you're not familiar with it, and share my screen. I'm going to take you to our website. So if you go to look up Oregon Department of Forestry and find forest benefits, you'll see urban forests, and you'll click on that. That takes you to our website. We're a small program, but we like to say small but mighty. There's two of us. The program manager, her name may sound very familiar to you. She actually lives in the city of Salem, and her name is Kristen Ramstad. She's the program manager. and I am the Community Assistance Forester for the entire state. And I happen to be on the east side of the Cascades, talking to you from close to sisters right now. On our webpage, you will see a little bit about, again, who we are. We've been around for 30 years, and it will let you know that we are as a city in Oregon, we are your free resource for everything urban forestry related. And if we don't know the answer, by goodness, we know where to get it. We know a lot of great people, including your urban forester who is in this meeting right now. And on our website, I want to direct you to just a couple of things. One is our newsletter. If you are not all subscribed to our newsletter, I highly recommend that you do sign up to receive our newsletter. This comes out, I promise you, we won't inundate your inbox because it only comes out seasonally. And the next one will be out in December. You can, right here, you can click and view our latest edition, our fall edition. The other thing that I wanted to go to, there's a lot of resources, as you can see down here as well. But the one I wanted to take you to now is the story map. I'm hoping that some of you have been on this site. This story map is how we like to celebrate Oregon's tree cities. Now, are you seeing my new screen? Okay, this is brand new. This is brand new last year. And the folks that are your city staff, they're going to receive an email from me sometime around December to let them know that this is going to be updated. I'm going to be asking for new photos and that kind of thing. But if you go down, you can find out more about the Tree City USA program, as well as the Urban Forestry program, what urban forestry is, and then you can start to see all of the different cities in Oregon that are Tree City USAs. If you go up here and we go to the S's and we click, well, Salem happens to be our first S city. And we have all the wonderful things that you have done in the city of Salem for your trees. We are showing the boundaries of your city. You can go zoom in, scroll around on your map. We even have down that the Salem has received the 3 peace trees. And if you click here, you'll go to our website that is showing the folks exactly where those peace trees are. You also have 6 heritage trees, Oregon heritage trees, and this will take you to the website. And this is the picture that was sent last year. Quite the crew you have out there.
I think many of us are looking forward to in person again, where we can have that out there.
No doubt. So a little bit about the Tree City USA application, which, forgive me, I took that off and I'm going to go back to that one. There we are. Okay, did that change?
Yep, looks good on our end.
Wonderful. So the Arbor Day Foundation is where the Tree City USA program is housed. They're the ones that actually created Tree City USA back in 1976. And the Oregon Department of Forestry, Urban and Community Forestry Assistance Program, we're the ones that administer it here in Oregon. So I am actually the one that it reviews the application that comes in. This application comes in every year, and I review it. I make sure that everything's in line. I'll work with the city staff on making sure if there's anything that needed to be included that wasn't the first go around. I'll make sure that they have the opportunity to put that in their application, and then I will approve it at the state level, and it goes on to the Arbor Day Foundation for their review. I will tell you that out of, I believe we have that Tree City USA now has over 3,600 cities with Tree City USA status. And so they're not going to review every single one of them, but I would venture to say that they do a audit every year. And so we never know when a city will be reviewed again. But their site is a wealth of information for not only cities that are wanting to become a Tree City USA, but for the Tree City USAs themselves. So I encourage you to visit this site and travel around it. So a number of things are required when you submit an application. The things that have to be uploaded with the application is a work plan. Oregon, we require all of our cities to submit an annual work plan for the year coming. So in this year's application, staff will be submitting a 2022 work plan. This will go over all of the things, not just taking care of your trees, but it should also be covering how you're reaching out to your community, for example. They also have to upload the Arbor Day proclamation, which has been signed and dated by the mayor. And that's, again, every year that needs to be submitted. This year, Arbor Day Foundation waived the requirement of an Arbor Day event due to the COVID-19. But most cities still did do something, even if it was online. I'm not sure. I haven't seen Salem's yet. So did you guys get to do anything, even virtual?
Yes, we had tree planting events that had smaller groups for a period of time with Friends of Trees.
Wonderful,
And
Patricia.
we're still working on our 45th year virtual event. So we had a poetry contest and a poster contest, and we're gonna have a tree trivia contest next.
Of course you did. It's Salem. You did. Oh, you always do something. Of course, they also have to, because a tree ordinance is also one of the requirements of a Tree City USA application, or to be a Tree City USA, the tree ordinance needs to be uploaded. And if there's any amendments in a year, that new ordinance needs to be included. Finally, there's a signature form that the mayor has to sign. This lets the mayor know that what was done for Tree City USA, and gives that person a chance to be a little proud of what they've overseen. The last thing, if I have time, is kind of important. I really wanted to show you what the Growth Award is all about. Do I still have a little bit of time, or
a little bit of time? We do have some other presentations tonight.
I understand.
But this is really great for us to know. As you know, Patricia mentioned, we see a lot of things about Tree City USA, and I think it's helpful for all of us to have a better understanding of the inner workings. So if you want to show us this last piece, and then please follow up with Tony on any resources that we can explore as well.
You bet. So this is really a great site. what this can do, if you're involved, if the commission is involved with helping to review or to write the work plan, the annual work plan, this is a great site to go to when you're reviewing that work plan. These are all the items, these are the categories, I should say, that a city can choose from when looking at the activities to get a growth award. Cities are eligible to receive this a growth award when they demonstrate higher levels of tree care and community engagement during a calendar year. You must have over a minimum, I should say, of 10 points in activities. Each activity is worth 1 to 10 points. Each of these 5 categories represents the building of a sustainable urban and community forestry program over the long term. If I was to put in the search engine eligible each year, because some of these activities are not, you will see there are many. I just want to direct you to a couple of them so that you understand that some of them are a given every year. Remember, I was telling you about that annual work plan and how it's a requirement. C7, you can actually submit your annual work plan, which includes the budget in this particular instance, and receive 3 points. So then you would only need 7 more points. Let's go down to another one. D6. D6 is also worth 3 points. And if your city has planted more trees than they've removed, guess what? You can have 3 points. So now we're up to 6. Some of these are very simple for a long-term running Tree City USA to actually receive, and then others take a little bit more work. I know Patricia and I have already connected on a number of different growth award ideas that she has wanted to submit, and I know you already have the points to receive a growth award this year. So that's what I had. I could always spend a lot more time because I'm a tree geek. I love to talk trees. So thank you for having me. And if you ever have any kind of questions, please don't hesitate to contact.
Thank you so much, Katie. Really appreciate that. It's really, as I mentioned, we hear about Tree City USA a lot, and Patricia, Tony, and the rest of the team do so much in terms of virtual events and other great. I have a Tree City USA sticker on one of my notebooks, not on this one right here, but one of my other ones. And it's nice to have the better idea of the inner workings of it. And kudos to our city staff for everything they've done to keep this going year after year. 45 years is a long time.
Thank you, Katie.
I want to open it up if any staff or board members have questions or comments.
If I didn't say this, and stop me if I did, we are a free resource to you. So, and very happy to work with you on even the smallest question or comment.
Thank you, Katie. I know Mickey and I think some others took some of the free webinars last summer that I found really interesting. Patricia, I see you came on. Did you have anything you wanted to add before we move on?
No, I just wanted to thank Katie and say it's always a pleasure working with her.
Feeling is very mutual.
Oh, and I see we have Alan joining us. Hello, Alan. Oh, you're on mute. There you go. We can hear you now, Alan. Welcome. We are just wrapping up an update about Tree City USA from Katie Lumpa from the Oregon Department of Forestry. Okay, well, thank you so much, Katie, once again. And we will, I think I'll make sure to go look at all these resources, especially the story map. I know how much work those take to put together. All right. The boxes are a little small with the shared screen, but I don't see anyone else asking any questions. So we will move on to our next agenda item. I'm going to stop the screen sharing. There we go. All right. So Jennifer, there you are. Perfect. The floor is yours.
All right. Well, thank you. From trees to creatures who love to eat trees. Can everybody hear me all right?
Yes, a very fitting transition.
All right. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to try to share my presentation here with you all. And hopefully I grab the right screen. Is that up for you all? It should.
Yes, it looks great.
Okay, great. All right. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Jennifer Mongolo. I am the Natural Resources Planner for the City of Salem Public Works Department. And I'll be presenting tonight on the draft strategic operations plan for addressing beaver activity within the City of Salem. This plan is being written by our consultants at Pacific Habitat Services, or PHS, and their subconsultant, Beaver State Wildlife Solutions. The plan is still evolving, and we are still working from a preliminary draft that is currently under review by some key stakeholders at agencies such as Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, Department of State Lands, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and the Army Corps of Engineers, as well as several local environmental groups. So really what I'm going to give you all today is a preview and an introduction to the plan, and you will get an opportunity to see the full plan moving forward. But why are we doing this plan now? The beaver population within the city does appear to be on the rise. This is evidenced both by an increase in the amount of foraging and dam building activity that's been witnessed by operations staff out in the field, as well as an increase in the number of calls from concerned residents asking for assistance with beaver-related conflicts. So this increase in beaver activity in combination with stream channels throughout the city that are often highly constrained by development and infrastructure are leading to increases in concerns about water getting backed up during storm events and potentially causing flooding, as well as damage to structures and infrastructure and tree loss or vegetation loss from both foraging and flooding. So to talk a little bit about the range of beaver or where beaver are, historically, beaver likely inhabited every water body and stream in the greater Salem area. But by the early 1900s, beaver populations had been decimated throughout the state due to unregulated trapping. At some point, that trapping fervor did drop off and the beaver population started to rebound, and they continue to do so today. And although many of our streams in Salem have been heavily modified by urban development, the majority are still potential habitat for beaver. So on the slide, I've listed some streams in Salem where city staff have recorded observation of beaver activity over the past couple of years. So this does not by any means represent an authoritative inventory of beaver distribution in the city. It is simply where our staff have noted them, their activity or signs. I think it's important to recognize that as beaver populations continue to expand and watershed conditions continue to change, we could see beaver moving into reaches that aren't currently occupied, and even those that don't appear to have ideal habitat. So what we wanted to accomplish with this plan is to provide city staff with a decision-making tool that helps them respond to concerns about beaver activity in a consistent, appropriate, and defensible manner, and to give staff the tools they need to respond to citizens' calls and complaints about beaver activity and with consistent messaging. We anticipate that this plan will have to balance and take into consideration many factors, including land ownership, regulatory and permitting requirements, legal considerations, risk management, and environmental and social aspects of beaver management. As beaver go about their dam building activities, they create and diversify habitats. And these activities also can provide essential ecosystem services in the process. So a few of the benefits I've listed here on the screen include reducing peak flow volume and velocities during storm events, reducing flood potential, channel incision, and bank erosion downstream of the dam, increasing nutrients and toxic, I'm sorry, not increasing, decreasing nutrients and toxic chemicals in the water by trapping fine sediment behind the dam, increasing groundwater recharge and elevating the water table, improving base flows during dry periods, improving water temperatures, and of course, improving that habitat and biodiversity. With that said, given that American beaver are a native species and that they provide such important watershed health and ecological benefits, the strategic plan will emphasize coexisting with beaver to the maximum extent possible and will guide city staff to only intervene when necessary to protect the city's vital public infrastructure and public safety. The types of beaver activity that we see causing conflicts or challenges that the plan will focus on are related to beaver activity that largely impedes the proper functioning of infrastructure, like blocking culverts, plugging storm drains, or flooding roads, paths, parking lots, rights of way, or structures, as well as unwanted tree damage or vegetation loss. Now I want to just pause for a moment on this slide and recognize and talk about location of the beaver activity. Because that's going to be something that's important in this plan and somewhat of a shift from our previous practice at the city. So in general, the city will be I anticipate that the plan will direct the city to only take actions related to beaver activity on public property. Unless, of course, that activity is causing a direct threat to vital public infrastructure or the greater public safety, beaver activity on private property will be considered the property owner's responsibility. That said, we do intend to make this plan publicly available and to develop informational resources such as a webpage and flyers to assist property owners with determining how to best resolve beaver-related issues on their land. There are two key components, a beaver management toolkit and a decision tree that will help staff determine how to respond to concerns about beaver activity. The beaver management toolkit will include standards for when, where, and what best management practices should be used by the city for mitigating specific types of conflicts with beaver. This toolkit will be designed to be used in conjunction with a decision having a hard time with that word today, a decision tree that will walk staff through a series of situational questions to identify the most appropriate approach. And then once the optimal approach is identified using that decision tree, staff would then refer to the appropriate sections in the toolkit to learn more about how to implement those tools, including special considerations and regulatory requirements or consultations with agencies that need to take place. So to talk a little bit about what's going to be in that toolkit, it will include a number of techniques for responding to beaver activity. In some cases, multiple techniques may be required to fully resolve a conflict. The easiest, of course, is no action in areas where there is no adverse effect to infrastructure or public safety and where impacts to vegetation can be tolerated. We may not be doing anything. Next, we have monitor habitat change in situations where there is currently no problem for infrastructure or public safety, but where there is potential for adverse effects to occur if the activity expands or shifts in some way, the site should be monitored. And the city already has a GIS app that staff use to document beaver activity that allows staff to take location data, photos, and notes and track that over time. So I anticipate that would continue to be used. When possible, it's always best to be proactive. So anticipating beaver presence and areas they're likely to use can allow us to plan ahead and design sites with beaver coexistence in mind. And that may alleviate future beaver management problems. So examples of this are things like designing new trails or park facilities in such a way as to minimize future conflict, making sure new culverts are adequately sized and replacing undersized culverts, planting unpalatable plants to deter foraging or beaver buffers, or planting beaver buffers, which basically areas that are dominated by the species that beavers prefer close to the stream to focus their foraging away from other vegetation that you don't want them to eat. And then another method is public education as well. Losing vegetation to beaver can be undesirable for a number of reasons, including threats to public safety and adjacent structures from hazard trees that have been girdled by beavers, reductions in stream shade given the Willamette River Basin TMDL, or damage to valuable ornamental landscaping. But there are situations where foraging or flooding of vegetation on public land will not be an issue, and this will need to be determined on a case-by-case basis. When undesirable vegetation is being threatened due to foraging, best management practices that can be employed to protect those plants include installation of wire mesh cages or painting an abrasive sand paint mixture on the trunk of the trees or shrubs. And when undesired vegetation loss is due to flooding, it may be necessary to consider habitat modification techniques instead, which is the next category of BMPs. And habitat modification consists of altering the beaver's structures, their dams generally, at constriction points to artificially restrict their habitat footprint. These techniques can allow the city to benefit from beaver activities while reducing risks to adjacent infrastructure. And examples of habitat modification that will be included in this plan are things like rapid response dam reduction, where beaver dams are reduced only the extent needed to reduce or eliminate threats at the time that that reduction is needed. Installation of pond leveler flow devices is another BMP. These keep the upstream level of the pond from rising above a desired elevation while allowing the beaver to continue maintaining the dam. And culvert protection systems are another type of habitat modification that can be used to keep beaver from plugging a culvert or a spillway. And finally, as a very last resort, when all other options have been exhausted, working with a wildlife control officer to trap and remove beaver may be considered as part of a larger plan to resolve a conflict that cannot otherwise be resolved. Since removing beaver from a site will open up that territory for other beaver to move in, any beaver removal strategy needs to be paired with habitat and/or infrastructure modifications to ensure long-term effectiveness. So for each of those techniques that I've just reviewed, the plan will discuss specifics on how to implement them, considerations for use and timing, and any permitting or consultation that may be needed with agencies. So to wrap up, I'd like to give you an idea of next steps. We'll be closing the stakeholder review period with the agencies and key environmental groups on October 25th, and that will be followed by plan revisions with the consultants. At that time, concurrently, we're also going to be working on the standard operating procedure for beaver dam assessment internally, which will be vetted and then attached to the strategic plan as an appendix. Once those pieces are complete, we will open up the public comment period and share the strategic plan with a larger group of stakeholders, including your board. Also at that point, I'd be happy to come back to SPRAB, likely in December, to provide an update and answer additional questions before we send the project forward to City Council. Once the beaver strategy is finalized, we'll be developing public outreach materials, including an informational webpage about coexisting with beaver in Salem, which will be based on the information and guidance provided in the plan. So with that, I will close the presentation and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Really appreciate that presentation and all the thought that's gone into this. I just want to remind everyone on the board that we did have 2 pieces of comment on this from from Ken and Linda Beerley. So just referring to that as you consider everything, but open it up to everyone for comments or questions.
I've got a couple of questions.
Yeah, Paul.
It's my understanding that beavers in Oregon under state law are still considered a nuisance and can be trapped at any time. Is that actually true?
It depends on whose land you're on. So if you are on private property, and that's one reason actually that it's best for private property owners to manage issues for themselves, because if you're on private property, that is absolutely true. If you're on public property, beaver are considered a fur bearer and are protected. So on our city land, we can't just go out and trap them. That's why we would have to work with a wildlife control officer.
Okay. And now my guess is when we talk about beaver removal, is it really just a euphemism for killing the beavers?
Not always. There's a number of ways to do that. Unfortunately, so the two main things are beaver trapping and relocation, or beaver trapping and euthanization. Unfortunately, although it'd be ideal to relocate in every situation, it's very challenging to relocate beaver for a variety of reasons. So that would be the first choice for us, is to be able to relocate. From my understanding, there's a lot of factors that have to be taken into account, and it's a very long process. And just finding a place where you can move them to, you have to have like all property owners within a 4-mile radius, or the majority of property owners within a 4-mile radius have to agree or support the beavers being moved. So even if the landowner wants to accept new beaver colony into their land, if all of the neighbors say no, that might not be a feasible option. So these kinds of programs for relocation, I think there's a lot of people working on that, but might not always be that viable of an option.
And last question, I believe there's some beaver dam in Minto Brown Park near the pond, and right now it looks like that's being left alone. And people are sort of either wading through the path that's flooded or working around it or taking alternate routes. But is there any specific plans right now to remove that dam, or just let the beaver be part of the wildlife refuge?
I do not believe there are any plans to remove the dam. I have had some conversations about potential for applying for a grant to elevate the trail, or do something to allow the public to continue to use the trail while allowing the beaver also, given that it's a natural area, allowing them to continue their habitat creation there.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll just quickly second sorry, Mickey, if it's all right, I just want to second what Paul offered there, that as a frequent Minto user myself, I've seen a lot of people turn around at that space, and fully respect and understand the beavers being there. But I think if we could elevate that trail and get a boardwalk or something, it is a beautiful part of the trail, and it helps with the connectivity there. So really underscore that. Mickey.
Thank you. And thank you, Jennifer, for the presentation. That was really informative, because it answered a lot of my questions about what kind of issues there are going on. I really enjoy watching beavers and watching their activity. As a salmon biologist, I've walked a lot of streams and seen a lot of beaver activity, and so I'm kind of partial to beavers. I kind of like them. But we're squeezing them out of their existing habitat in other places. So of course they're moving into the few places that we have left. And, they create their dams and create their ponds, or the ponds behind them, for protection from predators. So, in a way, I mean, it concerns me removing the dams or things that they're putting in place to protect themselves. And so that does concern me. So a couple of comments there. I did have a question because you mentioned being proactive. So I was wondering, during the discussions in terms of being proactive, what sort of things can the city do to address potential issues in the future? And the reason I'm asking that is because we're seeing a lot of growth in places, especially in West Salem and South Salem. So what sort of things can the city do proactively to either create or make sure that habitat is maintained for beaver when, prior to approving development plans? What sort of things are being discussed? So that's one question I had. And the other question just was about the public comment period. How long will the public comment period be? And I'm assuming it's going to follow the usual means of outreach to the public.
Right. Okay. Let me see if I can get those questions in order. So I know your first comment wasn't so much a question, but I do want to address the pond reduction and the vulnerability of beaver. So when I say, when I mentioned the rapid removal or rapid breaching of dams, what that would look like is going in after the water levels are already rising at the end of the season when beaver are least vulnerable, and notching a dam only the amount that meets the DSL requirement. That would only be done in the emergency situation that there is a DSL exemption that allows you to remove wood from the stream without a permit in situations where there's public safety or property damage risk or transportation risk. So it would be within that framework, and it would generally be the very minimal amount just to remove that risk of damage to the infrastructure and the public safety. And that said, generally at that point, what we've seen is that beaver aren't going to rebuild their dam at that point because the water levels are already rising. So they're not at their most vulnerable state where they're in their dam building phase. But that is definitely something to keep in mind. And it's something that will be, that I anticipate will be very well defined and explained in the plan to make sure that those kinds of activities are not causing undue impact on the beaver. So as far as what we can do for beaver when it comes to planning new development, I am not the right person to ask. I have a lot of thoughts on what could be done, but I have no control over that. I don't know if Patricia's on and she has any thoughts, but that she'd like to add, or any insights that I don't have. But I think you all know I'm pretty new to the city. I started here in January, and I am going to refrain from sticking my foot in my mouth.
Oh, come on. Well, let's see. So I know that one of the things, in the past, culverts are often undersized. Now when new development goes in or roads are upgraded, they usually have to have new culverts that are with open bottoms. It's like a three-sided culvert is usually what the agencies require. And so that allows for a lot more flow, which then makes it less attractive for dam building. There's also things that ODOT has done for specific kind of recurring incidents, I'll say, of dam building, and it's like at a critical point, a bridge or a culvert, and they've built some kind of picket fences, for lack of a better term, for them to kind of start to build their dam farther away from the culvert, upstream of it, so it doesn't get right into the infrastructure. Jen mentioned painting trees that you plant with kind of a sandy paint mix that discourages them, or wire cages. So that's something we've actually had to go. We didn't do that originally out at the Walnut Creek restoration site, but then when we were noticing that they were eating a lot of the plants that we didn't want them to eat, and we were trying to get some tree cover, we went back in and put pretty tall and sturdy wire cages. A lot of times people use chicken wire, and that's not strong enough. So things like that, I think, are some of the kind of the preemptive things you can do, or things you can do as soon as you see that there might be an issue.
Okay, thank you. No, I appreciate that. And I realize this plan is primarily for public land. You know, we do have public lands right next to private lands, and the beavers aren't going to exactly honor those boundaries. So that's one of the reasons for my question. Yeah, so thanks. I appreciate the emails from the Beerleys, because they brought up some really good points. I'm really looking forward to reading through the draft plan so that I have a better understanding of it. But this has been really great. Oh, Jennifer, the public outreach. I'm sorry, that was my other question.
Right, I was just trying to remember what your last question was.
How long will the plan be available for public comment, and how will the public find out about it?
So we are talking about maybe a 3-week public comment period, and we would probably do a posting online for it and send that out to whatever the normal channels are. Neighborhood associations, Patricia, is that right?
Yeah, so
okay.
Our usual method is, we do a social media post, we put a news story on the web, the landing page of the city website, directing people to the specific plan. And then we'll set up a place where they can respond. So they can directly email about the plan to us. And yeah, we'll do outreach to neighborhood associations and any other group that would like to have us come to speak.
Okay, thank you very much for the time and the comments.
And Jennifer, I want to underscore what Mickey said too. I imagine you also saw some of the public comments we got from the Beerleys, and I really appreciate what Ken provided in terms of very specifics on certain pages. And I think some of these are smaller edits that make a difference and are helpful to include. So really would encourage you to look at those and see how you can work some of that in if possible.
Likewise, I very much appreciated the comments as well, and we will definitely be taking a look at them and integrating changes based on comments we received.
Keith.
Yeah, I don't think I have any questions for you, Jennifer. Just wanted to say I think this looks like a really good approach, and looking forward to seeing the full written report. I think it's a tough issue to try to balance wildlife needs with human needs in an urban setting, and so I think the approach you seem to have laid out here makes a lot of sense, right? The stepwise approach and laying out a few different best management practice options there. So looking forward to seeing the final report and being able to comment on that here in a couple months.
Great, thank you.
Jennifer, one last question for context. How does Salem compare to other cities in the Willamette Valley like Eugene and Portland in terms of the beaver population and human interactions, some of the issues we're having?
I think other cities are seeing very similar issues and interactions occurring and taking very similar approaches. I did speak with someone at City of Portland, Bureau of Environmental Services. I know that Patricia spoke with people from other cities, I think Eugene, prior to my time here. And it sounds like it's a pretty common issue that's happening in all of the different conferences I go to, webinars I sit in on. Everybody's trying to figure out how to coexist with beaver, trying to recognize how important they are and what great benefits they provide us, but also that it's really a challenge considering the way development has constrained their habitat so greatly.
Thank you. And I have to give kudos to Tony Cato's comment here about lots of beavers in Corvallis. Well said, Tony. As a former OSU alumni myself, appreciate that. Any other comments or questions? All right. Well, thank you so much, Jennifer. And I think, as Mickey said, we're all really excited to read the full report and appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you.
Patricia, over to you.
Okay, for 3 of 3 presentations tonight. So I'm here tonight to present the Climate Action Plan. Normally you see me as the Parks and Natural Resources Planning Manager. I also got the short straw and the Climate Action Plan Manager now as well. So as Dylan knows, we have been working on this diligently. Why can't I move my screen? Let me try this again. Okay. It's not letting me do it in presentation mode. Okay, so where do our greenhouse gas emissions come from? So this is all about trying to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and also build resiliency. So this shows an inventory that was done in 2019, and it's based on 2016 data, but you can see where Salem's greenhouse gas emissions come from. And I'll just say that they come from the burning of fossil fuels. So the breakdown here is that transportation is our main source of the fossil fuels, 53%, and then the rest of it is kind of equally with electricity, and then stationary combustion refers to things such as natural gas or propane or diesel. A smaller percentage comes out from wastewater as methane and waste disposal from landfills as well. So that's kind of the breakdown of what the sources are for us. In October, I don't know why it's doing this, but in October of last year, the City Council set two goals. One was to reduce greenhouse gas emissions 50% from those 2016 levels by 2035. And the other goal is to become a carbon neutral city by 2050. So both of those are very, very big goals to try to obtain. So the climate action plan is actually two things. It's a plan to reduce those greenhouse gases, and then it's also a plan to build resilience in the community because we're already feeling the effects of climate change over the last several years. In particular, I think people have really been paying attention to some of the things that we've been experiencing in this community. So a large part of the plan is to help address some of those, and also to make sure that whatever we do is equitable and does not disproportionately affect people who are living outside or living in poverty or elders. So we're definitely looking at it from an equity point of view as well. Then the other key parts of it is the prioritizing actions for implementation and identifying key partners, because a lot of the things the city cannot do itself, it either has to come from the state or it has to come from other partners, such as Chariots is a key partner, or PGE. So one of the first things we did is set up a task force, and Dylan is representing SPRAB on the task force. It's quite a large group. We've been meeting all virtually on Zoom. We have our last 6th task force meeting coming up next week, 2 weeks. And so this is the group. We try to have a very broad net throughout the community to make sure that all these different groups were represented and at the table as we're discussing these actions. And so you can see from looking on the right-hand side, the different organizations that have been participating. And I'll just say that for the most part, people have really been engaged and participating in all the task force meetings. So it's been actually working out very well. We've also have 3 city councilors on the task force, which has been really helpful because they can hear all the discussions, they can understand the viewpoints that are being expressed, and then they can take that back to the rest of the council. In fact, we just had a work session on the 20th, and they were able to kind of express some of the things that they have heard and some of their opinions. So it's helpful to have the councilors on the task force. So what's at stake is that we are vulnerable to climate change. One of the first steps in the action plan was to do a vulnerability assessment. There's a whole department down at OSU that looks at climate change. And so they were able to run some models and kind of look at past and future predictions for what will affect Salem in particular. And so you'll see that list there of the things that we can expect more of. And as I mentioned, the equity side of it is that a lot of these affect people who are already affected by other things, such as they have other medical conditions, asthma can be affected, public health in general can be affected by a lot of these. People who are houseless, living outside, or who work outside, who don't have the ability to avoid days where, extreme heat. I mean, people died this summer from those extreme heat days we had, or the hazardous air quality is another concern that we're going to be facing. So both sides of the hydrology equation are going to be issues. There's going to be more flooding. There's going to be more intense rainfall events, possibly, flooding outside of areas that normally flood. And that can cause all sorts of other issues related to transportation and infrastructure and mold in buildings and things like that. And then the flip side is the drought. I mean, we experienced this summer, I think we're still in a drought, even though we've been getting some rain, but the entire state of Oregon was in one stage of drought or another. And this can affect water quality as well as water quantity. So that's of concern as well. And then I mentioned wildfire. This is a picture from last summer in 2020, where the wind was blowing towards us. And we all probably remember how awful 10 days that was, with like the worst air quality in the world for a few days. So that, going along with warming temperatures and drought, means there's going to be more risk of increased wildfire, high wildfire danger days. And then the warming temperatures, an excessive heat day is considered anything over 90 degrees. And those numbers are going to increase. I think this summer, last time I checked, we had like 26 or 27 days that would be considered excessive heat days. And some of those were over 100 degrees. The other thing about heat is that it builds up in cities, and there's this term urban heat island effect, which trees can help mitigate. So it builds up in cities through all the impervious surfaces, absorbing all the heat and then radiating it back out at night so the cities don't cool down. And again, this is an equity issue. A lot of places that are hottest are also the areas that have lower tree canopy and more impervious surfaces. So you'll see this is a map of Salem. You can see this is the airport. So you can see that's an extreme example of heat, because there's no trees and there's a lot of impervious or very short grass. But you can also see along some of the major transportation routes, it's all yellow or red. Those are our heat island areas. And then you go down more in this area of southwest Salem, where there's a lot of tree cover and it's not as hot down there. So, and then if you compared that to demographics, you would see that there's a relationship between those things. So the task force has been looking at different ideas for how to mitigate and reduce our greenhouse gas. And the public also weighed in. There's been a number of different activities online. And so all the ideas that we've been gathering have been assembled into these 7 buckets of ideas. The majority of them are addressing transportation and energy, because that's where a lot of the GHG comes from. And then these other ones are more around the resilience side of the equation. And these are just some of the ideas, the kind of general ideas that are coming out during the meetings and from the public. So hopefully some of you have participated in some of those online activities. But I think there's about 170 different ideas. So if you go to the website, you will see a list like this, a strategy list. So it's broken down. This is the natural resource tab. But so we have the idea here. And then we also have like, what is the potential for this action to reduce greenhouse gas emissions? And what is the very rough cost? Who is the lead agency, or who's the lead responsible party? What other kind of co-benefits does this action provide? And then an idea of like, when would we start this? So would we start it? Is this something that should start within 1 to 2 years, 3 to 5, or after 5 years? So there's a lot of different information embedded in this Excel spreadsheet. So the nice thing is we can sort it any way we want. We could sort it by all the city ones. We could sort it by all the GHG high actions and get different lists so that that'll help with figuring out implementation. So I just pulled out some of the ideas that are in there that are probably of interest to this group for parks. And also some of them also tie into our Salem policies. So there's some overlap between this and our Salem. But some of these are reducing use of chemicals, prioritizing native, increasing carbon sequestration through tree planting and the way we manage our lands, transitioning to electric vehicle fleet. Here's one that I saw that California was just going to implement, phasing out two-stroke engines in landscaping. So the leaf blowers and the lawn mowers are phased out. And then this was one that was particularly, we were asked to put this in by Councillor Nordyke, who's very interested in creating an urban tree commission. So you'll see that some of the things that she has listed that she wants this commission to do are things that SPRAB is already doing. So I don't know if that's something that you might want to look at in more detail, but she wanted to have that one in there because she thinks that Salem should have its own tree commission. So where are we right now is kind of near the end. We've had a council work session on the 20th that went really well. We have the last task force meeting where we're going to talk about implementation on October 27th. And all of these are live streamed and recorded. So you can watch them on the city's YouTube station, or you can watch them later on the links or on the website. And we're going out and meeting with boards and commissions such as this, also going to the Planning Commission and the Human Rights Commission in November. And then the goal is to take this to council on December 6th for a public hearing. And there was no public comment allowed at the work session, but I imagine there'll be quite a bit of public comment at the December meeting. So again, this is just the overall schedule. One of the key things is to hire a person in the city to actually manage this plan, because it is quite a large undertaking and it touches all these different departments, as well as coordinating with a lot of our community partners. And so somebody should be hired to kind of facilitate and manage that process so it begins implementation as soon as possible. And with that, I will take questions.
I just want to underscore, Patricia, you've done a lot of work with this, and I know the process has not always been straight. It's been a little bit of a up and down and whatnot, just trying to get everything organized. Like you said, we have quite a large climate action plan task force. So we have a lot of opinions, a lot of people bringing in different insights and good ideas, but it just means from a logistics standpoint, I've had to balance a lot all at once. So I'm really impressed with where it's at and what's come out of this whole process.
Well, thank you for participating in it. I know you were one of the first ones, Dylan, who sent comments on the draft plan that the task force got to have a sneak preview of. I failed to mention that the draft plan is going to be released next week, and it will be open for comment until November 5th. And then that was the reason, kind of the timing of it, for a special meeting to talk about the climate action plan. And if SPRAB wants to ask more detailed questions after you've had a chance to review it in detail, and possibly give a letter of support if you're so inclined.
And Patricia, if I might, it's one of the comments that I put in on the draft plan that I just wanted, if I could just highlight, is at the very end, there was a list of like ways that you can contribute. And it was very high level in terms of like, eat less meat, don't you drive your car as much, consider an EV. And I feel like we have so much in Salem in terms of local resources, including like the farmers market and the bike program, bike trails, et cetera, that the more we can tailor that end section to the things that already exist here to give people really tangible actions that they can take in the community would be helpful. And so I would just stress that as you're going around and thinking about what those could be, I think that we hear about a lot of great things, and it would be a missed opportunity to not highlight those directly.
Yes, and we do have those, you know, in the strategies, but they get kind of buried back in there. And, you know, a lot of the strategies to reduce greenhouse gas are very kind of high level, you know, chariots related kind of actions. And it's kind of hard for people to wrap their heads around some of these things or get excited about some of them. So yeah, it needs to have some kind of personal actions as well. I agree.
But I'll open it up to others. Do you have questions or thoughts? This might be a good time to follow up on what you were saying there about a meeting in November. So I'm just looking to make sure I get it right. Thank you, Tony, for distributing the doodle poll. And it looks like November 16th at 5:30 p.m. Worked for everybody that filled it out. 7 of the board filled that out. So we have a quorum. And Patricia, just to make sure I have this right, it likely would take less than an hour, but it will be an opportunity for all of us to convene once again once the plan is public and everyone has had a chance to review it. And potentially SPRAB would issue a letter in support as a result of that meeting. Is that accurate?
That would be great. Yeah.
Does that work for everyone? I know it worked for you all in the doodle poll, but I want to make sure that that date and time works and everyone's comfortable with that approach. Paul, I saw you just came back. I want to just say we were talking about November 16th at 5:30 p.m. is going to be our short kind of impromptu SPRAB meeting in November because the 11th was canceled for Veterans Day. But we're going to meet around the climate action plan for roughly an hour to talk about the plan and potentially issue a letter in support if we all agree.
Yeah, the date works very well for me. I'll plan on being there.
Wonderful. Any other comments or questions? Sorry, go ahead, Patricia.
No, I was going to say thank you for kind of making time to do that. And I won't put you through that presentation again, I promise.
Patricia, I wonder if to expedite the process, if I should potentially draft up or at least come with some bullet points ready for discussion to speed things up. If unless there's any objections from the board, maybe I come in with a starting point that we can add to an edit and then go from there. All right. I will work on that, especially I think as the representative from the board, I have the best insight into the plan, so I can do that fairly easily. Okay, well, I'm not hearing anything else. Thank you, Patricia.
All right, thank you, everyone.
All right, well, let's move into, we have board member updates. I don't have any more updates on the climate action plan. Keith, I don't know if you have any updates on the library strategic planning process.
I think the only thing I have, I think last time I told you that the survey had been delayed. Well, that did get launched, and I think it just closed on October 11th. So I don't have any formal updates from the planning committee yet, but at least that process has moved forward and I believe has concluded.
Wonderful. Any other board member updates that folks want to share? Okay. We'll move into our information reports then. So first we have the Mission Street Parks Conservancy minutes and quarterly report. I know there's Christine. Thank you for such a great report, always very detailed, and I appreciate that. Is there anything you'd like to add verbally to what we have?
No, I'm just here for questions if you have questions. Looks good to me.
Everything looks really good to me. I personally don't have any questions. It was exciting to see some of the brickwork and everything else moving forward and to see that process underway. But everyone else, do you have any questions or comments? Yeah, Paul.
I just was impressed with the number of volunteer hours that you get, with the number of people that are willing to contribute to maintaining the park and do the work that you're forward on. I think that says something good about the Conservancy in terms of getting the community to participate in it.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you. And we work them hard too. There's no standing around. Or very little standing around. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate all of your work. All right, well, we'll move into our urban forestry report. And we had a really nice detailed PowerPoint this time. Oh, there's Mylan. So Mylan, I think the PowerPoint speaks for itself. I mean, just incredible to have all this data, the maps, the pictures, everything. Is there anything you wanted to add on top of what you sent?
No, just apologize that it was not much information about what's going on currently. That's just a presentation I gave actually with Katie Blumqua and OCT and Oregon Department of Forestry recently. So just thought I'd share that with you guys. But as far as what's going on currently, we are spending the money that the council approved, the $250,000 to continue our storm work. So we have a contractor of record, Mountain View Tree Service, that's doing a lot of this work along with our tree crews. But we are also trying to get back to some normal activities, doing regular service requests, maintenance, tree maintenance, and we're trying to get back to where we left off last year before the storm, and going to start grinding some stumps and putting some trees back in the ground. So looking forward to getting back to some normalcy and working on some plans to work with Jennifer Mongolo on our urban tree management plan, and just some more planning for the future. So no, that's it.
Thank you, Mylan. I had one quick question on the tree canopy analysis, the GIS slide. You're noting that you can't say quantitatively exactly how much has been reduced based on the ice storm. And I'm just curious, I was trying to remember when those numbers are put up. Like, I know when we realized we got up to 24% canopy cover, and when would we have a sense of how much canopy was lost?
Yeah, as far as like directly related to the ice storm, you're asking?
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess if you know, when we ever have our next benchmark point, we'll be able to tell if it's stayed about the same or if it's gone down significantly.
Yeah, I mean, Patricia may have something to add to this too, but I know that the city's now paying for LiDAR imagery, which is a lot more in depth and you know, a lot better imagery than we were using previously. That we're actually going to get sort of images twice a year. So I think coming up soon, we'll know some of those numbers and those percentages moving forward. But I think some of the things that they were concerned about with that certain sort of survey that they did was the way the angle of the camera is at two different points in time. So it may have skewed some of the shadows and whatnot in those, and how they saw that those two different time periods relate to each other. But you can kind of get an idea of how many, you know, they gave an idea of how many acres were lost in that time period. And that's pretty significant amount. So I guess we'll know more this coming spring.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Questions or comments from others? Paul?
The detail on the report and how it thoroughly covered the ice storm kind of emergency, catastrophe, however you want to look at it. Was that part of that accumulated and put together to help justify maybe getting reimbursement for some of the costs for the work that was done, you know, for the city, for their other outside sources, whether federal or state, to assist with the cleanup?
No, for that particular, you know, presentation, that was just something I did for ODF, for Katie Blumqua and Kristen Ramstad. They asked me to speak at the OCT conference. So I just put that together because that's sort of what was on my mind. But I had worked with Public Works Department, Mark Bechtel, and all the folks in the emergency management system, and then a lot of our city staff who deal with the insurance reimbursement and the FEMA reimbursement very closely over the last 6 months. So that's just stuff that I knew from those meetings, and just sort of added some of that information for other municipalities to know sort of how we did it, and then just sort of share information.
It was certainly excellent, for sure.
Well, thank you.
Other questions or comments for Mylan? All right. Well, thank you so much, Mylan. Appreciate the detail.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Let's go into our Patricia, if you will come back, going into our parks and natural resource planning update. I was impressed with how much you got on a single page for this one. There were a lot of updates this month. Anything that you wanted to add before we move to questions?
Well, I know that you liked to ask, has anything changed since I wrote that? So as you'll see under the Beaver operational plan, it's not going to council on December 13th, as it says in that report now, because we're going to do the public outreach period, public comment period. So that is getting shifted out into definitely into 2022. And then I guess just as far as the online survey, it's open for the tree. We're kind of gearing up for our pilot program of planting trees in front yards. If people are interested in low canopy in the NOLA, we're going to start in the NOLA neighborhood area. But we did start with this random survey of people that are in low canopy areas. We sent out individual postcards to those folks. Unfortunately, we did not get a very good response rate. So we are going to be leaning heavily on the information we get through this open survey. So if anybody is interested, please take it. It's very short, but basically it's trying to get to what incentives people would need in order to plant more trees, or what are some barriers to planting trees, and kind of what are their perceptions about their neighborhood and the number of trees in their neighborhood. So hopefully you all got that that information. Tony should have forwarded a little announcement about it, and it's up on the website as well. Oh, thank you, Dylan.
I have it open, meant to take it today, but I will make sure to fill that out by the end of the week.
It's interesting because so far it seems like a lot of people are saying that they would spend, a lot of money, or up to, I think we have the breakdown of, over $20 a tree. And they would also, one of the barriers is that one of the things they need is kind of someone to tell them what is the best tree to go in the right spot. So that's encouraging.
Is there a plan or a hope that we could do something with the nurseries after this? I know this is something we talked about with the tree subcommittee early on, and like to bring them in and make them partners, even just having a list of, the nurseries nearby and just helping guide people to those and having them guide them on the right tree, right place conversation.
That has been one of the things that's in our strategic plan, is to kind of have that partnership. I think we need to, and Friends of Trees is very good at doing things like that. They've already have this system set up in the Portland area where they have a list. They kind of provide people a list of trees to choose from, and then they can help consult with them about what's the best tree for their particular location. And that way they already have the trees picked out and reserved from the nursery. So maybe something like that in the future, or working with Friends of Trees can help kind of bolster that.
That's smart. I did have one other point to raise, is just you have the annual report on here, and Tony, I just wanted to give you a chance. If I remember right, since we're not having a November meeting, you're hoping that folks might send you written comments on that. Is that correct?
Yes, excuse me. Yes, I am working on that right now. And also Patricia and Jennifer and Becky will be weighing in. And then I'm going to go ahead and just send it back through to Desktop Publishing and provide you all kind of a draft in November for you to review. And then in December, we'll kind of have a final draft that the board hopefully will approve at that time. And then we'll move it forward to council in January.
Perfect. Any other questions or comments?
Chair, may I say something to the board?
Yes, please, Mark.
I just want to remind the board as a whole, since the comments you're proposing to make are comments to consider eventually to be adopted as a board as a whole, I remind the board and caution the board, please only submit your comments to staff. Please do not CC other board members in your comments. It's natural to do, but it very easily could lead the board to running afoul of public meetings law. So send your comments only to staff. Do not include other board members. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate that reminder. All right, I'm not hearing any other questions or comments. So thank you so much, Tony and Patricia. I know Jennifer Keller couldn't be here tonight, but are there any questions on parks operations that folks have, and we can hopefully get those relayed and answered afterward? Okay, and moving on to recreation services. Becky, I don't know if, let's see, I see Becky's here. Anything you wanted to add in addition to what you sent us?
Something that did change before or after the report was done and sent. One of the first bullet points was about the holiday tree lighting, and a date has been determined, and it will be on Friday, December 10th. A little bit later this year than we have done in the past, but we wanted to have, the mayor wanted to be involved in availability of his schedule, and then also just to provide staff, park staff specifically, enough time to do the beautiful lightings that they've done down at the park. We're a little short on staff, and we wanted to provide them enough time after the holiday break of Thanksgiving to be able to get all the lighting set up. So that's something that has changed, and I wanted to make sure everybody knew that. It will be an in-person event. People can come down, but it won't be something like what we've done in the past, where we'll put up tents and canopies and people congregate underneath those because of COVID and that type of thing. We'll still do an event, but we'll also be posting it and doing it online so people can view it that way, to try to keep people from congregating in large groups. So I think the lighting, I believe what Jennifer isn't here tonight, but the lighting will be in and up and available for people to go stroll through at their convenience, December 10th through the 26th.
Could you remind me why we don't go through New Year's?
Yeah, I brought that up, and there's a few different things, but mostly cost, and that is park staff do quite a bit of setup. It's pretty extravagant, some of the things that they put up down there, and there's been damage, theft in the past. And we've thought about and will get security to be down there, but realistically, when it comes down to it, just the cost of either having to hire security or dealing with the constant need to fix and update or repair things. So they've decided to keep it up through Christmas, through the 26th, that Sunday, and then they'll start taking it down from there.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I have another question. In terms of the holiday runs, I see that you mentioned that there's going to be some. Has Salem done a turkey trot in the past? I know a lot of cities, and when I was out in DC, we used to do turkey trots a lot. And is that something that's on the table for Thanksgiving time?
It is. And so Melinda has scheduled a Halloween one on the 23rd of October. She's going to do one in November as well. I just heard today from the individual that actually does the Runacopia, which is the Thanksgiving Day run that happens at Riverfront, and he'll be back this year. So that will occur, but I think Melinda was going to do a city run walk, probably in Riverfront in November, but it won't be on Thanksgiving because Runacopia has always done theirs on Thanksgiving, but probably maybe the weekend before. And then she's going to do one in December as well. So going forward, it may not this year, but going forward in future years, the hope would be to do a fun run the day of the tree lighting. So
that's great.
But yeah.
Wonderful. Any other questions for Becky? Well, I always appreciate it. There's so many great things happening. I actually did not know about Runacopia, so that is something I'm going to look into. So I've not done that before. I learned something new. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Becky. So let's move into new business. And Mickey, I know you had wanted to circle back to the public comment we had at the start. So I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Dylan. I did mention Jeffrey James's email, and what I wanted to ask is I wanted to request that the parks planners review the concerns brought up by Mr. James in his email from October 8th, and for them to report back to us. And I don't have a definite time frame because I know they're all busy.
Yes, we can certainly do that.
Thank you.
That'd be wonderful. Thank you, Patricia. I really appreciate that. One other piece of new business I want to flag for folks. One is that we're going to have 3 vacancies opening up in the next couple months. And so we should be sharing this with our networks and letting people know that if they're interested in applying, please go to the city website, share it far and wide. Paul, I really want to thank you for your service and the time that you've put on the board, and really excited that you're contributing and actively participating for the next couple months, and appreciate your help in finding someone to replace you. It's going to be a big order to replace you on the board.
Well, I'm still asking people about their interests, especially those people who I know are frequent visitors at the park, and also some other people that are pretty civic minded.
Tony, I see you came on. Did you want to share anything about that?
No, I just came on in case someone had questions.
Okay, Alan, yes.
I think that Woody's his time is up, I think also. Now I know we need to have somebody with some expertise in that area. What exactly are they looking for when it comes to somebody who's knowledgeable about trees and tree management?
I will talk to that. So when the assignment to hear tree removal appeals was assigned to SPRAB, there was concern that that people in the board wouldn't necessarily have the expertise to read an arborist report or to understand some of the issues. And so the idea was to get somebody on SPRAB who had some of that expertise. Of course, we do have our urban forester, but I think the idea was to have somebody on the board who also had some level of understanding about trees and tree health and risk assessment and, you know, the urban canopy strategic plan and things like that.
Okay, so I'm asking, I have a neighbor who has an interest, and he's a retired state forester and spent his entire career working in forest. I didn't know if that was applicable for what we're doing here in the city, or just how far it had to go to have somebody fill that role.
Sounds like he would have experience in working with trees.
Well, he gives free advice in our neighborhood about trees, so what to do and what not to do.
I was just pulling up the bylaws to help answer that too. And it says 1 or more members shall have expertise in urban forestry, arboriculture, or horticulture to the extent that professional meetings, these standards are available in the community. So it's a little bit vague in that sense, but I think that'd be great. And I want to note too, so you're correct that Woody, and then the third one I had to look up because I know Paul had emailed me, but Tony Cato is also going to be leaving us. And Tony, you've been on the board for a long time and have served as vice chair and taken on a lot of different roles. So I really appreciate all of your leadership as well.
Yeah, no problem. Glad to serve. Yeah, I think it's been 6 years, 2 3-year terms. It's been enjoyable. It's interesting to watch the board change, obviously people, but also the different issues that have come across our SPRAB board have been very interesting, and they change from year to year, obviously, because Salem changes and the people in Salem change and our needs change. And so it's been quite enjoyable, and I appreciate your leadership too. Thanks, Dylan.
Absolutely. Thank you. And in terms of leadership, the other thing I wanted to note is looking through the bylaws here recently, the chair can only serve for 2 years consecutively. So we will have a change of leadership starting in January. And so as I will say that Mickey has done an incredible job as vice chair, and so has my full support to move into the chair role, but I want to open it up to everyone that will have that election in January. So if you're interested in serving as a chair or vice chair, keep that in mind. And I am, if no one else steps up, I'm happy to be vice chair to swap roles with Mickey and to continue help guiding the board, but I also don't want to get in the way if others really want to step into that leadership role and capacity. So really more of in terms of the homework here is to think if you're interested in one of those roles, and then also just spread the word far and wide in terms of getting new recruits to join us on this on SPRAB. Okay, looking just to make sure I got through everything here. And in terms of, I guess I should say, is there any other new business before we move on? Okay. Well, our next meeting, so just as a reminder, we will not have our standard meeting in November because of Veterans Day, but we are going to have the special meeting on November 16th at 5:30 p.m. And that'll be about the Salem Climate Action Plan. And with that, are there any final comments before we adjourn for the evening? All right, well, thank you all, and I hope you have a happy Halloween, and I will see you next month. Have a good evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks, see y'all.